We looked at people with moderate to severe Alzheimer's disease, which if you've had any of your own personal either effects or just exploration about this disease, you know those are the worst folks. Those are the worst, most severely impaired folks. They have just terrible, terrible severity of disease. Well,
What does that look like, when it's severe? Just put a point on it.
well, the best example would be the oldest lady we had in the study who was 93. She'd been diagnosed with the disease for about 12 years, which at that age and for that long of a period of diagnosis, usually you wouldn't even make it. Like you would normally people would have died before that. So clearly she was very resilient. But at that stage, she basically sat in a chair all day and couldn't speak. So, she was essentially like a piece of furniture. I mean, that's basically the worst level of severity before death, essentially.
What causes the people to pass away from Alzheimer's?
Usually it's just, you have systemic organ failure. Eventually the body just shuts down because you continue to have more loss of functionality and eventually your body just shuts down.
So it's not just of the mind. I mean, I thought that maybe people would forget how to swallow or how to eat, even with care. So that's why they would pass away. But you're saying it cascades from the brain to other organs at a certain point?
That's right, exactly. I mean, eventually everything is, of course, connected to the central nervous system. That's how all the other major organ systems get their inputs. And so as those connections start losing their connection, then the entire body just starts shutting down. So it could be I'd say in most cases, it's probably heart failure. Your cardiac system just shuts down, or it could be liver failure, kidney failure. I mean, just, take your pick of any of the major organs. And as those start shutting down, you're not going to live very long.
Right.
So again, we wanted to look at what we felt like were the most impaired group of folks that Big Pharma has no interest in. They don't study people with moderate to severe severity. They feel like at that stage, there's no pharmaceutical intervention that's going to do anything anyway. And we put them on our formula that we now call Daily Brain Care. We put them on this formula for 12 months. We assessed their cognitive function at baseline, 3, 6, 9, and 12 months. And then we drew blood at baseline and 12 months. Unfortunately, we didn't draw blood at 3, 6, and 9. We didn't have a huge budget. It was not a multi-million-dollar budget that we had. But now, as I look back on it, I wish we had drawn blood at 3, 6, and 9 and just banked those samples in the freezer for later analysis when we had more money. But anyway, it is what it is at this point. And so we wanted to compare within the blood, we wanted to compare a bunch of immune markers, immune function markers, inflammatory markers to what was going on cognitively, because we felt like based on a lot of Reg's previous work that we would get, a good indication of how the immune system and the central nervous system using cognitive function as an assessment, as sort of a proxy for brain function, would generate some interesting results. And sure enough, that proved to be true. So at the end of the study, and this was after, a couple of years. I mean, you're talking about a 1-year intervention. We enrolled 34 people in the study. It's a very sick population. These people didn't just have Alzheimer's, of course. They had diabetes, depression, various forms of heart disease. I mean, these were really sick folks. On average, they were 79.9 years of age, so they were an older group of people as well. But what we showed, Richard, was truly astounding. We showed at 9 and 12 months clinically and statistically significant improvement in cognitive function. Now, that's unheard of. You can compare that to certainly the 5 FDA-approved drugs for dementia. They don't do anything. If you're lucky, if you're taking one of those drugs, you might have delay of progression of the disease for a few months, but then after that, you just continue progressing to death. So they don't do anything. And then you can compare that to any other dietary supplement, any type of diet, exercise, hyperbaric oxygen, red light therapy, music therapy, acupuncture, you pick it, you name it. You will not find any other intervention that showed that type of an effect. And let me explain that for our listeners, because I make a very important distinction between clinically and statistically significant. So as I mentioned, we had 34 people in the study. If you have hundreds or thousands of people in a study and you do multiple assessments across a whole host, a wide range of biomarkers and assessments, the law of large numbers says that you will show statistical significance at some point just by random chance. Using P, the threshold is 0.05, which means 1 out of 20, you would find something just by randomness or by error. So again, you could have statistical significance all day long, but it may not be clinically or practically relevant to, in this case, quality of life for humans.